Hiring for your small business? If you're not looking for professionals on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. That's like looking for your car keys in a fish tank. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't even visit other leading job sites. So start looking in the right place. With LinkedIn, you can hire professionals like a professional. Post your free job on linkedin.com/people today.
When you make decisions for your company, you look for the no-brainers. And if you have a lot of mailing to do, Stamps.com is the ultimate no-brainer. It streamlines your processes to make your business more efficient, which makes you less busy. Mail checks, invoices, legal documents, and everything you need to keep your business running with Stamps.com. Seamlessly connect with every major marketplace and shopping cart. Schedule package pickups and see your cheapest and fastest shipping options from different carriers, with rates up to 89% off USPS and UPS rates. And with the Stamps.com mobile app, you can take care of mailing and shipping wherever you are. Make the same no-brainer decision as over 1 million other businesses with Stamps.com. Sign up with code PROGRAM for a 4-week trial, plus free postage and a free digital scale. No long-term commitments or contracts. That's Stamps.com. Code PROGRAM.
Welcome, guys, to this week's episode of Heavy Metal Tones, and me, your podcast host, Tony Evans. Firstly, I want to shout out to Parksy, my good friend Parksy. Wherever you are around the country, he's always travelling around the place. He noted that the volume of my vocals was a little bit lower, and then when it went to adverts, he had to really turn the ads down. And with other podcasters, he didn't touch his volume control. And I've just looked at my setup, and when I moved it to the new laptop, it appears that I must have knocked the gain on it, so it was a bit low. I'm sorry about that. So if this sounds better, you may not have noticed. I mean, some people, and this was the first time I'd heard of it, and I've been recording on this new laptop now for a month and a bit. So thanks anyway, Parksy. You're the best, mate. You're the funniest man I've ever met. Genuinely one of the nicest human beings on the planet. He's the only man that's made me laugh to the point where I actually fell over and couldn't get up with laughter. It was a fantastic night. Anyway, salute to you. Thanks, Parksy, to see how this turns out. All right. Okay, so extreme music. Now, we've done this in the past on the show, but I want to look at this particular one at black metal as part of the extreme scene. And its origins, I thought, because the reason I thought this is I was at the Rotting Christ gig recently at the Basement, or the Baso is called now, in Canberra, and it was one of the top 5 gigs of my life. To genuinely mean that, it was maybe top 10, one unbelievably great experience. Sadly missed by Benji because he wasn't well, but hey, there'll be other nights. But the thing is that I thought to myself, because there was points there where I was sort of pogoing a bit, and I was wondering, I know the origins of extreme of black metal come through bands like Venom and things like that, of that sort of early era of the early 80s, late 70s, early 80s, that sort of mix of punk and heavy metal. And I thought, I'll have a look into this a bit more. And the more I dug, the more I noticed that when I listened, that the connection between not so much traditional sort of first wave punk, but more the sort of later second wave of punk, 70, sort of 80 onwards. I felt that there was a definite connection. Bands like Discharge and GBH and an American band called Ambix, and things like that. There was definitely that certain savagery that those later punk bands had. Not oi bands. No, oi bands. If you don't know what oi is, it's OI. Listeners, oi is a rather nasty, sadly, byproduct of the Thatcherite years in Britain. The disenchantment with the education system, the job situation, and the bleakness of the teenage youth. And so some of them lashed out particularly at immigration and immigrants within the country. Rightly, completely wrong. So completely wrong, of course. But they sort of stole the skinhead image, which skinheads back in the 60s, my brother was a skinhead back in the 60s, and they were not violent people. Yes, they looked violent, but they weren't. They weren't racist by any means. They were into reggae, dub. They were very much, the Who at one point was sort of a skinhead band. I mean, Ozzy Osbourne was a skinhead, and he's by no means is he a neo-Nazi, but unfortunately they did take that on board. So not that side of the punk movement, but more sort of the extreme noise terror, the sort of unlistenable end of the punk scene. I think things like Crass to some extent, the sort of anarcho punk bands, the ones that were far more left wing political than the rest of them, and that will come into being later on in this episode when I talk about the connections between politics and black metal, because they connect quite well. I really enjoy extreme metal, as you might know. Now, it's not for everyone. I've talked about this before. It's some people find it extremely impenetrable and unlistenable and almost sort of just noise. And it, to some extent, it can be that way. And a very famous intro. I can't say this word properly. Oh my god. Ethnographer, I think that ethnographer. Sorry, it's about ethnic origins. Ethnographer, Keith Kahn Harris, did say that to the unlistened ear, it's extremely difficult, because he defines it. The characteristic of extreme metal can be regarded as clearly transgressive. The extreme metals are all intended to violate and transgress cultural and artistic norms and social boundaries. And the noise can be close to formless to those that are not initiated. Lyrically, black metal goes into areas of no hope and redemption, and no redemption. It often attacks Christianity, regarding it as weak and submissive. It often has misanthropic themes such as kill yourself, kill everything. It can be left leaning, but we'll talk about that again later on. This is, and the trouble with when you're thinking about or you want to discuss quite interestingly and subjectively the black metal scene and its nuances, is that you can't. There's no other genre of music in the world, in music at all, anywhere, I don't think, that has so many subcategories and subgenres. I mean, I'm going to name a few of. This is a few, by the way, of black metal subgenres. Okay, ambient black metal, folk black metal, industrial black metal, national socialist black metal. I said that we quit because it's horrible. Post black metal, black gaze, like shoegaze, right? Psychedelic black metal, melodic black metal, raw black metal, symphonic black metal, and unblack metal, which is probably like Christian black metal. Who knows? I'd never heard that before until doing my research for this show. And it's not, you can look back to the very genesis of the subgenre headed by the term black metal, and look at Venom and say, yes, they did invent it, and yes, they sort of did, because they brought an album out called black metal. It makes obvious sense that they would be the progenitors of the genre. But I think it goes much deeper than that. I think that where Venom will talk about Welcome to Hell, Baphomet, very, very interesting non-Christian imagery, and it might offend and shock some people. And I think that, but they're not true. They're like Kiss, in some respects. They wear the makeup. They they walk the walk, but they're not really dyed-in-the-wool Satanists, right? Whereas a lot of the later black metal bands that we'll talk about in the second half, they really are. They sort of live this sort of strange left-handed path, right? Whereas Venom, I think, were born of the punk movement and of the and mixture of extreme, just trying to be extreme to be different. I think that's the thing. They were trying to be extreme to be different to everyone else, and I think that's where some of this later black metal misses the mark slightly, because it's just being nasty for nasty's sake, right? It's not doing it to be different, Anyway, I could go on a different path, right? What I was saying, so the origins of black metal starts there, but I think it's interesting. Okay, so Venom write these songs like, I said, Teacher's Pet and Welcome to Hell and black metal and To Hell and Back. And I think sometimes if you want to be really intellectual about it, I think that the lyrics themselves are very clever in the fact that they're using this imagery, I think, to misdirect. So hell and back, does it mean, it could be literal, to hell and back, walk the paths unknown, untreaded by man before, all that sort of stuff. Or are they writing the lyrics because of Thatcher's Britain, where no hope, sadness, violence, aggression, misdirection, undirection, a directionless, the way the word is. Is it that? Because I think sometimes that's what is happening. Then it sort of breeds, and like any artistic movement, one person takes an idea and goes one way, and one person goes the other, and they can create more and more aggressive imagery. Now, I've always said that for me, extreme music is not something that I can listen to every single day, and that is the truth. I can't just put on Marduk or even my favourites, which is like Rock Pit and Heads of the Dead. I can't always put it on. I need light and dark shade and stuff, right? But I think for me, I just had this conversation with my friend mate Dave about this. I think heavy metal is like a drug in a lot of respects. That you start off taking the light thing, I'll have a little toke of this, a little line of that, a little smoke of this, or whatever. I listen to this stuff. I'm listening to a bit of Iron Maiden. Oh, it's heavy, because I remember when Iron Maiden was the heaviest thing I'd ever heard in my life. And then there's a point where, if you, like me, you want it to be heavier and heavier and harder and more aggressive, and you want to find and push those boundaries, push the boundaries. And that's how I think this genre particularly sort of grew. It's how I grew with it. I just wanted to find more and more and more. I wanted to see how dissonant, how noisy, and how fundamentally tuneless in some respects I could go while still enjoying it. And I know my limits now. Like anything, I know where I can go. And some stuff I can do, and some stuff I can't do. And I think that itself is a reflection on its heritage. You know, punk itself was a similar thing. Okay, like it was like rock and roll in anything, any form. It all had to get faster and harder and heavier. You know, jazz, blues, rock and roll, rock, heavy metal, extreme metal, blah blah blah. It all grows because people want to push. Not everyone. I mean, you might be sitting in your lounge room, or your bedroom, or on the bus, or walking home with me listening in my ear, you in my ears, me in your ears, and you're saying, "No, I'm quite happy with listening to UFO and Saxon, right? Fine." And that might be as heavy as you can go, but there's a lot of us out there who just really want to see how far we can push the boundaries, and it's similar to progressive rock, whereas progressive rock was the same thing. It was, how far can we push the boundaries? Can we get a number one hit where we're just playing classical music overloaded with extremely widdly diddly keyboards and, you know, falsetto vocals? Can we do it? And yes, they did. Okay, so, and people bought the records because they wanted to hear something different. There's a point where you don't eat the same meal every day, do you? You want something sometimes a bit spicier, a bit heavier, a bit bad for you in some respects, and I think this is what black metal really is to me. Anyway, I will define the musical sound for you. I haven't done that. I meant to do that at the beginning of the show. Naughty Tony. It's abrasive, high tempo. Okay, increased aggression, heavier in both tone and content. Highly distorted in both vocal and musical. The vocals usually guttural, screaming, gurgling, and played at a high speed at sometimes 200 beats per minute. It's not about technical wizardry on the guitar. It's about proficiency of speed, how to keep that rhythm at the speed that is going at, which is incredible. All right. I also akin musically black metal to art forms. If you think about human beings have always pushed art to its extreme. You know, they've always pushed the boundaries of human thought and exception and you know, and I know the things I can't cope with. There's some of that punk stuff from America, like G.G. Allen. I just can't go near it. I really can't. I know that. Is it G.G. Allen and the Murder Junkies? Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I'm just not. It doesn't do it for me. Incredibly interesting character, but it doesn't do it for me. But so I equate it, like the sound I just mentioned there, you know, distorted, guttural, violent, to art. You know, imagine 500 years ago, when, or probably longer, when Bruegel or Hieronymus Bosch was painting, and they were painting pictures of hell and imps and minions and violence and torture that was, you know, then extremely diversive and upsetting to a very Christian and very religious society. The difference being then, I suppose, is that you just didn't look at the picture if you don't want to, and now I suppose you don't listen to the music. I mean, it's the same thing, I suppose, really, but it was much more. It's very similar because that kind of thing shocked, society then, and this is what black metal to some extent is trying to do. Now they'll tell you that they're not trying to shock, that they're just making their own music, and if it shocks you, then it's your fault. I actually don't believe that. I believe a lot of this, sort of nihilistic, anti-Christian, anti-religion themes, whereas I enjoy them because I find musicality in everything. It's sort of, I don't know if that's true. I don't know whether you would deliberately go down that, unless you're a really tortured soul, and there are some out there, go down that route. I just think that, again, there are very few true satanic bands. I'm sure there are people out there who dabble, but there are very few true ones. There are some very scary ones out there, and I've seen some bands live that have made me think, I think that was a bit too close for comfort, right? There's bands like Waitain from New Zealand, for instance, Marduk from Sweden, as I mentioned earlier. I mean, even to some extent, people like King Diamond. I mean, King Diamond, for all his falsetto vocals and his black and white, sort of satanic makeup and his big hat and all that stuff, he is actually a true Satanist. I've mentioned this before on the show. I've known a few in my life, and they're not all baby eating, bloodletting creatures of the underworld. A lot of them are very, very nice. In fact, I highly recommend you watching the Not the 9 O'Clock News sketch on YouTube about interviewing the Satanist church leaders. It's very, very funny, with Nell Smith and Griff Rhys Jones and Pamela Stevenson. It's very, very funny. I might, if I can remember, I'll put a link to it. But I'm sort of babbling around this this genre. It's a tricky one to sort of try and get your head around. What I was, as I said right at the beginning of the show, was that my thought is that it really is the bastard child of heavy metal and extreme punk. Not, as I said before, like X-Ray Specs or the Punk or Pistols or the Ramones or anything like that. I'm talking Motorhead and GBH and Extreme Noise Terror and all those real, DIY punk bands I really loved. UKDK, that sort of stuff. Eccentrics. There's a lot of bands. To name a few that were mainly centered around the UK, a lot in America, because the Americans sort of merged the music and made a hardcore, something called hardcore, and I think hardcore is also a base to black metal because it offends and upsets people and is extreme, and I think that's what black metal is trying to do, using very easy imagery. It's very easy to just slap on a load of black paint, corpse paint, have nails, huge nails sticking out of your armbands, and call yourself Gorgotha and spit blood and growl. It's very easy in that respect to do that, because you're going to shock someone somewhere. You're going to, the only thing I'd say is, please, black metal bands out there, could you please make your reticle covers and your band names easy to understand, because you're sometimes trying to find an album and the lettering is absolutely atrocious. It's like a dyslexic spider's had a fit in an inkwell and has brawled all over the page sometimes, and you sort of like you're flicking through your records and you go, I don't know what that one is. All right. Anyway, it's a light note there at the end. I'm going to now stop for a minute. I'm going to have a quick drink, and then on the other side we're just going to talk about some of the bands that I think, if you wanted to get into the genre itself, that are worth having a listen to. I will give you warnings if they're really hard to deal with. If not, if you don't hear that, then it means that I don't think you'll have trouble with it. I think most of you by now, my fan base, isn't it weird to say my fan base, but my listener base, will probably sort of understand where I'm coming from and hopefully trust what I'm saying. So anyway, I've babbled on for 22 minutes. I'm going to have a bit of a break, and I'll see you on the other side, guys. Bye for now. Oh no, where's my stop button? Oh my god. There we go.
Hiring for your small business? If you're not looking for professionals on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. That's like looking for your car keys in a fish tank. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't even visit other leading job sites. So start looking in the right place. With LinkedIn, you can hire professionals like a professional. Post your free job on linkedin.com/people today.
When you make decisions for your company, you look for the no-brainers. If you have a lot of mailing to do, Stamps.com is the ultimate no-brainer. Use the Stamps.com mobile app to mail everything you need to keep your business running with up to 89% off USPS and UPS. Make the same no-brainer decision as over 1 million other businesses with Stamps.com. Use code PROGRAM for a special offer. That's Stamps.com, code PROGRAM.
Welcome back, my darklings, to this episode of Black Metal. A little quick chat about its origins, and I may have missed a thing, I may have skipped through something, I may have overlooked something. If I have, don't hesitate to tell me. I'm sure I don't mind being told. Now, just a quick rundown here of some of my favourite black metal bands. Now, what I didn't say in the first part of the program, which I should have done, was it's predominantly European, and it's predominantly cold nations: Finland, Sweden, Norway, Denmark, Germany to some extent, Poland, those sort of Eastern Bloc countries. Ukraine makes some brilliant ones that seem to make the most sort of unfathomable sound sometimes. The Americans do it brilliantly, absolutely brilliantly. In fact, it touches every. I was listening to a Taiwanese black metal band not that long ago, and so it's everywhere. I think even like cultures like India. It would be interesting if Indian black metal bands were using Christianity as their target audience to attack, or whether they would use Hinduism, and who knows. I mean, it just would be quite interesting to see if they do that. But anyway, anyone out there who knows about that sort of stuff, please do drop me a line. I would be absolutely love to hear it. Anywho, I'm going to start with some of the earliest, one of the earliest ones. I'm not going to talk about Venom because we've talked about Venom on this show before many times. I want to look at stuff beyond that, right? So we're going to talk about Bathory. Bathory is a Swedish black metal band formed in, I'm going to really butcher this, Vällingby in March 1983, named after Hungarian Countess Elizabeth Bathory, who bathed in the blood, supposedly bathed in the blood of her virgin servant girls. The early Bathory albums are extremely rare on vinyl, extremely rare. I think the first album with the goat of Mendes on the front with in yellow is particularly sought after. They're sort of pioneers of the bat. They, alongside with Venom and Merciful Fate, they sort of considered the pioneers of the genre. That's why I started with them first. The Scandi black metal, as I like to call them, they often are put in the same category with Mayhem and Dark Throne and Gorgotha and Satyricon and Emperor and Dark Funeral and Enslaved, Immortal Marduk, Moon Sorrow and Dimia Borga. They're all very theatrical. They really sort of brought the image to the forefront. The corpse paint, the spiked armlets, the leather, the sort of very the very caveman-esque, very dark, very sort of from the caverns of hell kind of look. My favourite album is going to be the first one, Bathory, 1984. It's certainly it stands out an absolute mile It's like Venom on acid for me. It's that one step more than Venom were. It's got some brilliant tracks on it. Hades, Reaper, Necromancy, and Sacrifice are the first tracks on the, Storm of Damnation, which is the intro track. And then on the B-side, In Conspiracy with Satan, Armageddon, Razor Dead, War, and the outro. My favourite of the whole album would probably be Armageddon, followed very quickly by Hades. You don't have to guess what the stuff is about. It's not it's not hidden within the lyric. The image and the structure of music is certainly there. I think if you're going to start with early black metal, want to do obviously Venom's black metal, then move on to and then do a War with Satan by them, and then on to Bathory's first album. Then you can do whatever you want after that. Really, it's up to you. But that's where I'd start. And then I'd go into Mayhem. Mayhem, interesting band as well. Let me just get my information up. Give me a second. Oh God, my page. I can't find the page. One moment. I'm going to pause, dear listeners. It's so annoying. It's old man stuff. Now, I found it. I'm not going to talk about the church burnings and the violence, the sort of like strange sacrificial and suicidal violence. I've mentioned this before on the show before. I don't want to go down that route. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to bring it up into put it into the atmosphere. I think it's vile, and it's sort of a stain on, unfortunately, on a musical form that can be challenging and interesting. Anyway, Mayhem is a Norwegian black metal band formed in Langhus in 1984. They're one of the founders of the Norwegian black metal scene. Then they had their notorious live performances. There have been some sadness. There's been a suicide of the vocalist Peter Sveen Oln. It's quite sad, okay, and of course there is lots of violence based around it. As I mentioned before, we're not going to talk about that. But if you put that aside and want to hear a snippet of something, of a moment that if you become interested in the subgenre, want to dive into it, you have to, for all of the stupidity and the violence and the aggression and things that went around, you have to listen to De Mysteriis Dom Satanas, which is their first album that came out, and it in 1994, in fact. A bit later in the genre, it's a little bit later on, but you do need to listen to it. It can be slightly unlistenable, dear listeners. Tracks like Funeral Fog, Freezing Moon, Cursed in Eternity, Pagan Fears, Life Eternal, From the Dark Past, Buried by Time and Dust, and De Mysteriis Don Satanas. They're not short pieces of music, so they're actually quite progressive. Most of them are over 6 minutes. It's not, again, should I have pulled that up first? I don't know. Maybe. Anyway, all I'm going to say is that you can dig into that background and listen and find out what Euronymous did and what happened. It's up to you. I don't encourage it, but unless you have to. Hard to listen to, yes, but important if you're going to listen to that. It's like going to say I'm listening to punk, but I don't want to listen to the Pistols. That makes no sense. Stark contrast between Bathory and Mayhem. Bathory is much more musical and more traditional in its origins, but Mayhem is a lot more contrasted. It's the other end of it. It's that very stark, dark end of the. Not so much now, of course, but I'm talking about earlier. It's very, very nasty. But something I think you have to broach. And then we're going to look at Dark Throne. Now, Dark Throne is sort of one of those super groups of the black metal scene. It's one of those ones that a Norwegian black metal band from Kolbolten, Arkansas. I think I'm going to not pronounce that wrong, probably, friends. Formed in 1986 as a death metal band, but named a band called Black Death. In 1991, Darkthrone embraced a black metal style influenced by Bathory, see? And of course, Celtic Frost, which I haven't mentioned, but they were going to be the next thing I was going to talk about. It became one of the leading bands in Norway. I actually really like Darkthrone musically. They're probably my favourite of the first wave of that sort of sound. Quite a large discography. I'm again going to go to their first album, Soul Slide Journey. It's a death metal album, so it is a bit different. It's not as black as it could be. So if we're going to go to their first black metal album, it would be Blaze in a Northern Sky from 1992. Recorded in August, released in February. It is my favourite of the black metal of that they did because it's really technically proficient. It's got one of my favourite covers of all time from the black metal genre. Very stark, extremely black. It's just got their logo in the top corner and a very sort of monochrome, almost photocopied cover, which is a lot of that. You get a lot of that black metal. It's what's similar connections with the punk movement because it's all underground and handmade and DIY, and I love it. Track listing on it though, Cartharian Life Code, In the Shadows of the Horns, Paragon Belial, Where Cold Winds Blow, A Blaze in the Northern Sky, and Pagan Winter. I'm going to say the first track is my favourite, which is Catharian Life Code. It's 10 minutes 39. It's textured, it's layered, it's angry, it's cold, it's aggressive, it's technically brilliant, it's Spartan yet full, it's unlistenable but listenable. It's a contradiction unto itself, and I really love, in that respect, I love the nuanced atmosphere that you get with this particular track. So yeah, that's as Darkthrone, and I know they have played Australia a few times, and I've never had the chance to go, and they were here a couple of years ago, and I didn't make it, and it really sort of pissed me off. Anyway, let's look at some others that I had. Okay, here we go. Of course, Celtic Frost, but I've talked about them before. So Celtic Frost were Hellhammer. They really are the sort of pioneers, along with Venom and Bathory. But I've talked about them before on the show, so I'm not going to, go back and have a listen yourself and find out. Rotting Christ, who I mentioned right at the outset of the show, are possibly my favourite. In fact, they are my favourite of the extreme black metal bands because they are the most musical. They have a beautiful melodic melody to their music. It's very church-like. There's a lot of spoken word, a lot of chanting, very, very rhythmic bass and guitar parts. Sakis Tollis, the lead vocalist and guitarist, who I had the very privilege of shaking his hand and getting a photograph with him recently. They're from Greece, formed in 1987. They're the first black metal from that part of the world. They're pioneers, and I think for me, you don't expect, as I said before, you don't think of warm countries and tropic, Mediterranean paradises to link them with black metal. So it touches there everywhere. They are, because of the Greek Orthodox Church, they've got a lot that they can attack and a lot that they can delve into, and it is, I would highly recommend, with Rotting Christ, I highly recommend, of all the albums, I'm actually going to recommend the one that came out a couple of years ago, which is The Heretic, because it's got the Raven on it, and I absolutely bloody love. And I've talked about I've talked about it on the show already. I think I may have reviewed it if I remember rightly. I really think that's a cracker of a track. are much softer than they were, but then everything changes. It's like Satyricon. Satyricon's later albums, people say, oh, they're not like the cold, wintry, atonal nightmares of their first albums. Well, yes, that is true, but you can't always do that because you do have to put food on the table and pay the mortgage, and unfortunately, that sort of extreme metal doesn't always. You do need a little bit of commerciality sometimes. It's exactly the same with Behemoth. The early Behemoth stuff is almost unlistenable. The later stuff is a little bit more easy on the ear. One of the bands that I particularly like, I'm jumping ahead here, but one of my favorite bands that I recommend you listening to is Batushka. Batushka are a Polish band that play folk, Polish funereal music. Now that sounds, you think to yourself, that sounds atrocious, Tony. What you're talking about, funereal music. Well, it is actually amazing. They're brilliant live show. They're like they what Ghost should have been and what could have been. They come on stage in cowls. You don't see their faces. They skulls and candles. It's like extreme riffing guitars, but it's sort of like wonderful harmonic wonderful harmonies of this sort of low guttural religious chanting. And it really is. I first saw them by chance on a YouTube channel, and I thought, hang on, this can't be right. And then I just went into a rabbit hole with them, and it just, yeah, brilliant band. I mean, Hotspot is my favorite of their albums. Only had a few. There's a few issues around them. One of the reasons they don't tour as much as they should is that there is some controversy. There's two types of the band, you see, and there's people that took the name. I'm not going to go into all the politics behind it, but there was the satanic Polish black metal, basically. They do attack the Eastern Orthodox Church, the Slavonic Church language they use. As I said, I think Hotspot is my favourite of the albums. I'm trying to find. Here we go. Yes, they have done other under different names. I mean, of course, there is Witching Hour. Okay, Witching Hour Productions, who produced a lot of their stuff. Liturgy is another fantastic one. I'm not going to pronounce some of the words because it's in Polish and I can't pronounce it. And I love my family has some origins way back in Poland, and you need to borrow a vowel sometimes, consonant, I should say. But I'm diversifying what I'm trying to say. But it is endless the amount of bands you can find. You can go as black as you want with Mayhem. You can go as traditional as you want with Bathory. You can be as musically proficient as Dark Throne and Immortal. Abath, who I have a big soft spot for, who played in Immortal for years. It was meant to come to Canberra, and COVID got in the bloody way of it. Their last album, their album Sons of the Northern Darkness, is brilliant. It is. They're the sort of band that when you see them on video, they sort of are the archetypal band, the look. One of my favourite things is I've got a meme somewhere of a bath in a tin bath, and it says "Splish splash, I'm taking a bath," which I really, really love. They can be a little bit polarizing, their sound. I really love the early Immortal albums because they're basically they're like the superstars of the of the sort of European black metal scene, I think, really, because Abath is a character. You can't, lead guitarist and vocalist, he's got this sort of crab walking style he does, which makes me giggle, but at the same time I really love it. I'm gonna say that probably again, Sons of a Northern Darkness from 2002 is a brilliant album. Northern Chaos Gods and War Against All, which I basically got recently, which I really loved. I got a reissue of Sons of Northern Darkness, and it's a really great album. But I'm going to say, pick of it, first album, Diabolical Full Moon Mysticism. Brilliant cover. It's got Abath spitting fire. It's 1992. It's recorded in Norway. It's quite a short album at 34 minutes. Highlights of it, I'm going to say Call of the Winter Moon. Abath wrote that. It's absolutely brilliant. Cryptic Winter Storms, Cold Winds of Funeral Dust. I love those sort of names. Blackened in Darkness, and The Perfect Vision of the Rising Northland. These are all long songs, most of them 9 minutes and 5, 6 and 7 minutes. I think there's one you want to get into if you want to jump into something there. Jump into Immortal, because their stuff's easy to get. The imagery that they put across is not too much. So as I said, you start with someone like start with Venom, then go into your Celtic Frost and your Mayhem. Sorry, not your Mayhem, your Bathory. If you feel brave, jump into Mayhem, early Mayhem that is, because it can be tad uncompromising. If you want slightly easier listening versions of it, Immortal is very good. Dark Throne, another one. If you want that more technical sound, there's Burzum, Emperor, Enslaved, Gorogoth. I mean, the band that plays the festivals a lot, who is that you can easily find their stuff, is Dimia Borga. They formed in 1993, and they're a Norwegian symphonic black metal band, and that's a little bit more. If you can ever call black metal easy listening, it's probably more easy listening than a lot of the other ones. There are so many. Each country will have one. You'll be able to find one that you can. If my tip, this is a Tony top tip. If you can't read the name of the band, genuinely, probably stick away from it, because it's probably going to be. I once listened to a black metal band, and I'm not lying here, and I've mentioned this on the show before. I was asked to review it. God, no, I can't remember the name. I put it on, and it was just 40 minutes, and I kid you not, listeners, 40 minutes of rain noise, thunder noise, howling wolves, and someone just screaming. There was not even a lyrical music. It was just screaming. 40 minutes. It was like people put on music to go to bed to, all of white noise or whale noises. It was something like that for the really sick of mind. It was. I couldn't review it. I sent it back to Mike, and I was like, no, sorry, get someone else, because all I'm going to do is be rude here. So there are those extremities, because that's what punk allowed us in the music industry to do, and allowed musicians to do, is to do other things. Be what they are without being too technically proficient, but also at the same time wanting just to create an outlet for their own twisted and interesting artistic output. So I've only skimmed over. I've just named a few. I'm not going to sit here and name loads of them. I basically was named a few that I would start with, and then I famously, absolutely, and you'll find it in one of my episodes if you remember, I do like the dark irony, the juxtaposition. I listen to the most extreme Norwegian black metal when I'm putting on Christmas lights outside in front of my house and putting my Christmas tree up. I feel the beautiful, nuanced. It just makes me smile, because I'm Jewish. I'm putting up a Christian image, and I'm listening to satanic music, and it's just delicious, and I love it. And I just cannot wait for that time of year, just to plug in myself to some Celtic Frost, some Burzum, some Mayhem. some Gorgoth, some, whatever I put my mind to listening to, Immortal or whatever. Yeah, absolutely fantastic. That's it for me this week. I hope that you enjoyed that. I hope that you go and explore some of these bands. And if it's not for you, then good. Then it's not for you. Then you can tick it off and say, I don't like it, Tone, and that's fine. I just think that why restrict yourself? Why, go, I only listen to one thing? It would make life so dull if you ate the same meal every single day of the week, if you drank the same drink every single day of your life, if you listen to the same band every single day or the same type of music. Where is the growth in that? Now, it might shock you, and it probably will for those of offended ears, but good luck. You might find melody in it. I find the beauty in it. If you look for it, you'll find it, because it is there. It's just buried deep within the anger and the sorrow and the vitriol and the bitterness. It is there. Anyway, enough of that waffling. Have a good week. Have a good rest of your week. Keep safe. Keep rocking. Please do go and like and subscribe and give me a review. Helps the algorithm find me. And we'll chat about something again next week. Talk to you soon. Bye for now. Bye-bye.
When it comes to buying your first home, everyone has questions.
Can we even afford to buy a house right now? Well, I need to negotiate. How do I even negotiate?
Luckily, a RE/MAX agent has answers.
Hey, Brian, those are really good questions.
They are? Thanks. It's my first time buying.
I work with first-time buyers all the time. I got you.
RE/MAX agents have more experience than other real estate agents. Visit RE/MAX.com or download the RE/MAX app to find the right agent. The right agent can lead the way. Each office independently owned and operated.